Hi everyone, welcome to this video. This is an introduction to the Cisco Switch CLI part 1. So I appreciate everyone joining this video. I apologize for the day as well in coming out with this video. Unfortunately, I didn't quite get everything done in time as I would have liked to, but the video is here. I've had to break it. This is going to have to be 3 parts, unfortunately, because I've had to re-record part of my lesson, and so unfortunately it's been broken into 3 parts now, but this is part 1. So let's get into the lesson. So in parts 1 and 2, what we're going to be doing is we'll be talking about Cisco Meraki. So we'll be having a look at Cisco Meraki, Catalyst and Nexus, and basically comparing these 3 product lines of switches. Then we'll be talking a bit about Cisco's Catalyst OS history and how they've moved between different OSs, and or rather they started with Cat OS, they moved to iOS, and now we've got iOS and iOS XE. And then in part 2 we'll be looking at cabling connecting via console connection, the terminal emulator, telnet and SSH, and user and privilege exec mode. And then part 3 there will be more covered, but I will talk to you about that at the end of part 2. So let's look at Meraki's Catalyst and Nexus, right? So these are 3 Cisco switch product lines. It's very important to know the difference between them, just have a basic understanding. So Meraki, right? Meraki is designed for small and medium business environments, where there's not going to be as many IT stuff with that kind of experience. So you've got limited network staff expertise to be able to configure switches like Catalyst, where you primarily interact with them through the CLI. You're going to be interacting through CLI. You need some networking expertise there to be able to do that. With Meraki's more simplified management, and it's based on the cloud, which is good for those kind of environments as well. Updates are done automatically, which is quite an advantage where you got limited IT stuff. You don't quite have as much if you've got limited headcount in your team, you've got limited department, automatic updates really help out. There's just less administration for the people to do, so that gets pushed onto the switch, and the switch will it gets pushed onto Meraki, and Meraki manages the automatic updates there. Important to know when it comes to licensing, Meraki uses a subscription-based licensing model. Okay, sorry, that's supposed to say per device. Sorry, that device has been a bit covered, but that's a subscription-based licensing model per the device. Every device needs to be licensed, and it's very important to know that if you don't pay the license, if your license expires and you don't renew it, you don't renew the license, then the switch will cease to operate. So you want to ensure for operations that your licenses are renewing seamlessly, and you've not got a delay where the switch is out of license, because that will cause a big impact on Meraki. Catalyst not so much, because they have more flexible licensing. The switch will still operate without a license, but with Meraki, no, it's a big no if you do something like that, where your license expires. So you want to make sure that you don't move your switch doesn't fall out of license. So yeah, for small to medium business environments, Catalyst is designed for medium to larger environments, and there is more control for the IT team. You need network expertise there to be able to manage and interact with Catalyst switches, but you have more control, which is great. Scalability, lots of scalability with Catalyst, and the licensing is more flexible, like I said. So if your Catalyst switches falls out of license, it's will still operate, but with Meraki it ceases to operate. So you don't want to have that situation where your switches now cease to operate. One thing to know is something similar between Meraki and Catalyst is that Meraki has Meraki Sport Stacking, Catalyst Sport Stacking. Meraki supports something called virtual stacking. So, for example, you have switches in different floors or in a building, you can still stack them together, which is great. So that's virtual stacking. It's a really good feature of Meraki. Nexus was a product line released in 2008 and it's for data centers. It's more expensive. Have the speeds that you're looking at are going to be way faster than Catalyst. It runs as the NX OS operating system, and when it comes to Nexus, one of the flagship products of Nexus is the 9000 series, and when you look especially application-centric infrastructure (ACI), when you learn about data in the CCNA, that's something that's built, that's powered by Nexus 9000 series. So is a very, very important technology. One thing, sorry, I didn't mention was Meraki was founded by MIT graduates in Mountain View. So it was originally a startup, 2006 it started, and Cisco bought it in 2012 for 1.2 billion. So it was a big deal, but that got Cisco into this market for those small to medium sized environments, producing a more simplified a product which is more simpler to manage for those kind of businesses who don't have that expertise. And I'm going to go a bit more into that here. So this is a statement by Rod Sudbury, who at the time was the Senior Vice President of Cisco Enterprise Networking Group. When they made the acquisition of Meraki, he said this: the acquisition of Meraki enables Cisco to make simple, secure, cloud-managed networks available to a global customer base of mid-sized businesses and enterprises. So these companies have the same IT needs as large organizations, but without the resources to integrate complex IT solutions. So I think Mr. Sudbury there really captured what I was trying to say, where if you have limited expertise, Meraki is really a great solution for those kind of companies because it's simple. Being cloud managers is really helpful as well for those kind of enterprises. He also said that Meraki's solution was built from the ground up, optimized for cloud with tremendous scale, and it was already in use by thousands of customers to manage hundreds of thousands of devices. So being optimized for the cloud really helps these kind of enterprises. So lastly, let's talk about Catalyst OS history. So Cisco's Catalyst is its longest running product line, and the history goes back to the 90s here. In 1993, a significant acquisition was made of Crescendo Communications, okay, and that got Cisco into the switching market, and they introduced something, they introduced Cat OS, okay, this is the predecessor to iOS, and Cat OS, so that was the first switch operating system. Cisco routers were using iOS, and so for a time you had routers and switches using different operating systems. And what Cisco did was they worked really hard to create a switch OS based on iOS that was being used on the routers, and they produced a switch iOS. And so most of the switches that were released in the 1990s and 2000s, the Catalyst switches, were using iOS. So that was great because then the routers and switches, they on the same page in terms of operating system, makes it easier for administration. In 2004, which was a very long time ago, 21 years ago, iOS XE was released, and that improved on iOS because there were some limitations. But it's very, very similar to iOS. There's the differences are quite minor, but in terms of the commands, when I'm talking about the actual command syntax, is very similar. So important point to make is that the official CCNA Cert Guide refers to iOS and iOS XE as iOS, unless explicitly stated. So the iOS term is used broadly to refer to both of those operating systems because they're so similar. So unless explicitly stated, you can assume that iOS is referring to both iOS and iOS XE in the official CCNA Cert Guide released by Cisco Press. Last point I want to make is when the CCNA exam refers to switch, unless explicitly stated otherwise, is referring to Catalyst switches. So that brings me to the end of part 1, guys. Thank you so much for joining this video. Please join me in part 2. We're going to go further into this topic and be looking at these things here: cabling and connecting via console connection, terminal emulator, TLNS and excuse me, Telnet and SSH, and username privilege exec mode. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.